voting. It is time for deeds and not words. It is time to just stop oil.
Politics is failing us. Politics failed women in 1914. If millions will die due to new oil and gas licensing, millions! If we love history, if we love art, and if we love our families, we must just stop oil.
This is insanity, by the way, people. Institutionalized insanity. Just stop oil. How dare you?
Hundreds of billions of pounds made every year. Our politics are filled with dirty money. The suffragettes slash this very picture.
I support jail time for this. We're gonna let this finish. By the way, notice they had special tools to break what I presume is protective glass over that. What was it? 125 million, or was it 625 million dollar painting? These people belong in jail, and then they can talk about, reducing that time if they seek the appropriate therapy. But
you need to leave the room, please. Ladies and gentlemen.
It's not short in here.
This room is closed. Head to the exit,
You need to leave the room, please.
This exhibit.
You need to leave the room, please, sir.
this exhibit is closed. By the way, did you notice those things on the ground? Hey, looky here.
Room, please.
This room is closed.
You need to leave.
Hold on one second. Look, I'm not much of a sleuth, but I Googled orange handle hammer. These things are called life hammer. You see that little slit right there? That's for cutting a seatbelt. This hammer is designed to break through windshields so that you can get out of a car. And the handle, you guessed where I'm going with this. The handle's made out of polypropylene. What about it? Not polyurethane, polypropylene. The handle's made out of a derivative of oil. These idiots, because they are idiots, and I will dare say, idiots in the clinical sense. Who's that? Idiots in the clinical sense, protesting oil by smashing the glass of an oil painting while professing if you love art, you'll stop oil. While at least it was made in the Netherlands. I mean, they seem to be made in the Netherlands. While using a life hammer, the handle of which is made out of oil-based products. Plastics. Plastics, Jerry, plastics. Oh my goodness, that I made it here only a few seconds late is, that's something of a feat on its own. For those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, and for those of you who are not part of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com community, that's little Winston, who just cost me. Oh, get over here. He's a little tired now. Just cost me a cool $300. I swear to you, though, if you get, it's actually $275. If you get in and out of the vet for under $300, you're having a good day. This dog had the nastiest yeast infection. Oh, you little bastard. The nastiest yeast infection in his ear. I don't know where he got it from and how. And I'm not good at rubbing his ears out. He doesn't let me touch them, and I don't like it. And I can't stand watching them do it, so I had to take him to the vet. They scrubbed his ears out, gave him a needle in that, whatever, and some antibiotics and some antifungal. Oh, man. And so just like that, I'm $275 US dollars. That's another problem. I'm still converting everything into Canadian in my head. We love Winston. Yes, we do. We love Winston. Holy crab apples. So we're having our Sunday show on a Monday, and sweet, merciful goodness. I didn't miss a day. We're streaming on a Monday night, and the news doesn't stop. Crowder, I'm sure everybody, we'll see what happens with this discussion on YouTube. I think everybody on the internet knows about it now, because Crowder had 170,000 people watching live as he went over 3 pages of the leaked manifesto of the trans shooter in Nashville. The manifesto, which has not been disclosed to the public for reasons which might now seem a little bit more obvious. And somehow he got a copy of a few pages. I don't know if he has the whole thing. This is where we're going right now. He got a copy of a few of the pages. I don't know how he vets that it's accurate. He's got sources. He apparently did a very thorough due diligence to make sure that it was authentic, legit, what he was reporting on. I mean, I've come to the point now where like I don't even trust things when I see them with my own eyes, is the level of lacking faith in the accuracy of information online. But he ran with the story. He got the leak. He went over the 3 pages of the manifesto. And yeah, everyone's saying it's legit. I mean, I'm not denying it. I'm so neurotic that even if I did all, you check the front door 5 times and then you still worry that it's unlocked when you leave. It makes sense why they didn't want to release that manifesto. What's amazing is the weaponization of information, the weaponization of the legal system, the justice system, the prosecutorial system, law enforcement. When it's of a certain demographic, release the manifesto. They release the intentions and call it a hate crime before the investigation is even commenced. In this case, my goodness, they refused to release the manifesto. Somehow Crowder got it. By the way, somehow Crowder might be in a world of trouble right now. Let me just see what Post Millennial was just reporting earlier today. Where is it? Post Millennial right here. We've seen the weaponization of everything. We've seen how FBI will go after Project Veritas for having been given a diary and accuse them of theft. Apparently, though, they were reporting that they were going to potentially investigate the leak. And if I'm Crowder, I mean, he's doing the journalism work that journalists are not doing. If I'm Crowder, I might be nervous that the full weaponization of they're going to investigate the leak, demand that he reveal his source, threaten to or jail for not releasing the source. During the live stream this morning, Crowder was saying, we will protect our sources. We will go to jail for our sources. To which, I don't know who the AG of Tennessee is or Nashville. He says, all right, hold my beer. This is from the Post Millennial, and I think it really just came out November 6th. Yeah, I mean, I think this was just published moments ago. Flashback, trans activists claim trans school shooter Audrey Hale was a victim of transphobia, but manifesto reveals she was fueled by anti-white hate. Those crackers going to fancy private schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks with their daddies' Mustangs and convertibles. So let's just see this. On Monday morning, pages from the transgender Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale's manifesto was leaked, revealing anti-white hatred and plans to kill those kids. Among the 3 pages released by Steven Crowder, Hale wrote, those crackers going to fancy schools, we got that, want to kill you little crackers, bunch of little F words with your white privilege, F you F words. That's the 6-letter F word, not the 4-letter F word. Now the question was, however, whether or not Crowder's going to get investigated by the Nashville AG. Now I'm looking at the tweet from Jack Posobiec, which says, though that's not the right tweet. Where was the one where he suggested whether or not they would be breaking? Anyhow, it's breaking news. What do I think of the manifesto? It's a question as to whether or not you release these manifestos ever. And if you release them ever, then you release them always. The selective releasing of manifestos is the weaponization of crime. When it suits the purpose, you'll release the manifesto, weaponize it politically for all sorts of political ends, political pursuits. And when it runs contrary to a narrative that people want to believe, then you don't release the manifesto. And you bank on the silence and weaponize the refusal to release it so that nobody can actually know that there's hate crimes going on. Inasmuch as all crime is motivated by hate, inasmuch as we designate some crimes hate crimes, then you have to apply that same litmus test to all crimes that fit the same pattern. If you go after someone for their skin color because they're black and you call that a hate crime, well, then you have to call something a hate crime when they go after the skin color if it's white. This is a question of good for the goose, good for the gander. If it's a hate crime to go after someone for their skin color, it's always a hate crime to go after someone for their skin color, even if that skin color, I don't even know how you qualify it as the majority when it's not the majority, depending on where you measure it from. But you always apply the same standard, or you don't ever apply the standard. But if you apply the standard sometimes here and not other times there, that's called weaponizing everything. And that is the lawfare, the political weaponization of crimes for political purposes, and ignoring the hate motivation of certain crimes when it's inconvenient. But the idea that this seems to have been a deliberate attack target of white people and Christians, and the media covers it up. I mean, I hate playing this game because I don't play this game. Had it been an attack on a black individual, a black institution, it would have been called a hate crime, and it would have been weaponized by one side of the political aisle for any number of the reasons, and you could make your own checklist, which we've all grown very accustomed to. But because it is in fact a hate crime, targeting the people who are being vilified for everything, because you remember now, it's Christian extremism that's the biggest threat in America. It's white Christian men, biggest threat to America. When that's the narrative, and then you have the fact that this person was transgender doesn't make anything easier for the narrative. A transgender individual who's going through all sorts of clearly delusional thoughts, have psychological issues, boy howdy, targeting white Christian children, no less. And then it's covered up, and now instead of I thought that when I read the headline that they were going to be investigating how it wasn't released, how the manifesto was covered up and suppressed. No, they'll go after the truth tellers. They'll go after the Crowder for leaking it. How'd you get it, Crowder? Well, you don't need to have stolen it in order for the FBI to come up to you and say, we think you're in possession of stolen materials. They did it to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, and they'll do it to anybody who publishes anything that runs contrary to the narrative. So that's where we're at with that. That was the breaking news of the day. Now, hold on one second. I gave Barnes the link for sure. I was going to start with something that was not unpleasant, just to share what I did today. But let me see if I can. Oh, this is what I wanted. Well, I was going to start with this just because, a slight change of pace, everybody. There's this place in Florida called the Loxahatchee, the Arthur A. Marshall Nature Reserve. There's always alligators there, so I go to check out the alligators, dangle a GoPro in the water, see what I can capture. Okay, look at this. To be a field trip of it's a bunch of kids in canoe kayaks.
And this guy.
Sitting there, looking at the children menacingly. I don't know, I'm not a judgmental person. This doesn't seem safe to me. Oh, and it disappears under the water. I mean, The problem about this place, everyone should go there. It's beautiful. There's a nature reserve. There's a walk. The problem with it is it's clear that people who fish there feed the alligators, because not only are the alligators not scared of humans, they approach, I suspect, in the hopes of catching a free meal from any of the people there. And so, this thing it sees movement in the water. The alligators approach the humans, and it's terrible. There's a sign that says a fed gator is a dead gator. But what's quite clear is that people are feeding these gators. Okay, so while Barnes is getting here, let me share the link with Rumble. Okay, we're live on Rumble. I should have checked that to make sure. Oh, have we got a show and a half tonight? Here's the link to Rumble. It's in the pinned comment. We're going to start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Are we live here? We're good here too. And then we're going to end on YouTube, go on over to Rumble exclusively. And then after we're done the stream, we go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, take questions, answer tips, and so on and so forth. What do we have on the menu for tonight? Oh my God, the Trump stuff. We've got a lot of stuff on the menu tonight. Let me just make sure that Barnes got the link. You have the link? Question mark, smiley face. You have the link. And we're going to get with this show. Standard disclaimers: no medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. Super chats, YouTube takes 30%. If you don't like that and you want to support the channel, you know how the best way to support the channel is? And I'll show you, I got one myself. The best merch on the planet is at vivafry.com. There are some issues that I'm noticing sometimes. If you order different products, they ship from different locations, and so it's separate shipping for all of them. I'm trying to work on it with our guys, so hold tight. But if you order the same units, they come from the same place, you don't pay for too much for shipping. The wanted for president, because Trump testified today in the New York Leticia James persecution. Wild. I mean, I'm following the guy Klasfeld on Twitter. We'll go through some of his tweets. It's wild. Gonna be wild, as he said about the thing. If you go to Viva Fry and you get some merch, and I'll show you, it looks just as good in person as it does on the interwebs. Rumble rants, they have the Rumble rants there. I read those as often as I can. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com for tons of exclusive stuff. Some stuff that is strictly for supporters. We love all of our members and community members, but there's some stuff that is exclusive for supporters, but you don't have to support to get a ton of other stuff. You can just become a member. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. Now, do you give advice on erectile dysfunction? Bamboo, I haven't seen you in a long time, sir. How are you doing? Do I give it? Hell no. I mean, premature, whatever. We can talk about that, but not erectile dysfunction. Although that might be a form of, but no. Real Bambunga, for those of you, I haven't seen you around for a long time. The real Bambunga always had witty remarks and witty jokes. You know what? Until Barnes gets here, I'm gonna start with one thing here. We're gonna go through the Klasfeld, Adam Klasfeld. Now, Twitter is being a pain in the neck. It's not letting me. It's not letting me open up an incognito. So I just have to make sure not to reveal my messages, my DMs, my very, very private DMs. Klasfeld is live tweeting the Trump New York Leticia James trial, persecution, kangaroo court show trial, whatever you want to call it. It's wild what's going on. We're going to get to Leticia James, her tweet of the day, because, you know, Leticia James never misses an opportunity to post her videos summarizing what happened during the day. Trump testifies today, and they're trying to get Trump, to hold his feet to the fire that he overvalued his assets. When I'm tweeting out all of these examples of Klasfeld saying, Judge Engeron has ruled that all of these defenses are not valid defenses. It's already been ruled Trump can't raise a number of defenses that he would have otherwise raised to counter the idea that he either fraudulently inflated the value of his assets, or that some of the provisions in his agreements explain away how everybody knew to take these things with a grain of salt type thing. That when you evaluate your assets, the bank comes in and does their own, and you have some boilerplate provisions in there that you can take with more or less seriousness. You can add more or less weight to the provisions. Okay, I want to see every time they say Trump already said. The judge already ruled that he can't raise that defense. Let me see here. Let's see this here. If I go like this. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's start up from the beginning. It doesn't seem that the judge likes Trump, doesn't like what he's been saying. He seems to be rambling, and the judge is like, you can keep talking. I'm just going to draw negative inferences from whatever you're talking about. Hold on, let me bring this out here. I'm not finding it fast enough. I know that I tweeted a couple of them, so let's just bring a couple of them up. Here. Oh man, add to stage. Okay, this is me. That's me talking right here. Here we go. Kai says, "Oh my goodness." So after there's some fighting with the judge. The judge says, "No, you can't talk about the worthless provision clause. You can't talk about this defense, that defense. I've already ruled you don't have grounds for those defenses." They are talking about filing a motion to revise the terms of the gag order, because now you'll recall that the lawyers have been gagged as well. Trump's attorneys make post-trial arguments on motions they may intend to make, such as mistrial motions, because they believe that the judge has displayed such bias that there should be a mistrial, or challenging the expansion of the gag order to the lawyers, because the judge says not only can Trump not say anything targeting my staff, neither can the lawyers. The judge, Abba, came out and delivered a great statement after court today. The latter barred Trump's lawyers from making statements about his confidential communications with staff Angron says, I'm 1,000% convinced and you don't have any right or reason to complain about my confidential communication. Because apparently what's going on is that the judge is communicating more than he should be or more than is appropriate with his special clerk, the one who took a picture with Chuck Schumer. And they're like, they tell him, like, this is not normal, Your Honor, that you should be going back and forth so much with your clerk. We might want to make a motion. We'll get to it because I need to ask Robert's opinion on this. The judge says, you can't make a motion like that. And they say, well, we think we can make a motion like that to revise the gag orders and a motion for mistrial. Okay, we're going to get into all this. Barnes is in the house. Let me just see one thing right here before we bring this in. I would pay my left testicle to listen to Barnes and Thomas Sowell just chat while drinking bourbon and smoking cigars. You don't have to go quite that extreme. We can see if we can make this happen. Okay, we got Barnes in the house. Let's bring him in. 3, 2, 1. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
Look, I started a little bit with the anger on, but we're going to have to get into this because I got so many questions that... Robert, first of all, what's the book you have behind you? The Strange Laws of Old England.
Laws, yes. The Strange Laws of Old England. It's a good little book about some of the peculiar legal history of our Anglo-American legal tradition.
And Robert, how's it? So, you look like you're back home. How was the travels? First of all, how did you like Mar-a-Lago?
Beautiful place. Beautiful place. The ballroom was beautiful. The whole facility is obviously a gorgeous place, really done it well. You go back and look at the history in current dollars, just the cost to build it was over $100 million. Less in those dollars in that day, but that gives you an idea. It has some of the unique marble, unique roofs, unique materials that went into the building and the design. So the idea that it's worth 18 million today is rather absurd. But it's gorgeous place, gorgeous facility, a good event there by Dinesh D'Souza. It was good to talk with Devin Nunes, Jeffrey Clark about, I was handling certain things in jest. I was like, it's a great opportunity, all the cases he has to deal with. They're trying to disbar him. They've already blacklisted him from law firms. They're trying to put him in prison now, all for writing a memo as a Justice Department official. Which is just absurd. It sounds like the fundraising has gone pretty decent, has gone well enough. People can continue to support Jeffrey Clark at the Give, Send, Go for him because he's one of the lead lawyers in the Georgia case, and he's having to battle the disbarment. He's having to go through some of the things that Professor Eastman is going through in California. Thought Police State, highly recommend it. You can see it on Rumble or on Locals or order the DVD. Got to talk to the director and some other folks while we were there, which was enjoyable. Well done, well put together. And credit to D'Souza for his willingness to say, a lot of this goes back, the worst politicization goes back to at least the W administration. And as he pointed out, he at the time excused the Patriot Act, and now he realizes that the critics like Senator Paul, like Ron Paul, and others were correct. So credit to him for that. Very moving closing to the film. So it's worth your time to see the film if you get a chance. Really, some insightful interviews that I have not seen anywhere else, as well as putting it into a coherent narrative framework of understanding how we got here, to the degree that we see the insanity we're witnessing in New York.
Florida Dad actually has a question here. Robert, did you catch the November 3rd Salon article about Trump rejecting further input from the Federalist Society? Did someone finally listen to you?
Yeah, well, I think he's witnessed it. He's seen that a lot of the people that have promoted that, they pushed a lot of judges on him, and he went along with their advice, them and the Heritage Foundation. And a lot of those judges didn't turn out to be what he was promised they would be. Because the Federalist Society has good components to it, no doubt, but has compromised components. There's people at the top at the Federalist Society who are aligned with the state, aligned with the Bushites, aligned with the Federalist Society pushed Christopher Wray. Wray is probably his number one area where he second guesses the advice that they gave him. But I think some judges that they promoted that, stood down during the election contest, that are not intervening as yet in these insane cases, I mean, to such a degree that people like Senator Vance has been calling for the impeachment of the D.C. judge. Now he's saying he's going to hold up Justice Department officials being nominated by the Senate until and unless the nonsense of the attacks on Trump stop. And so we'll see. But a lot of the Federalist Society nominees came from the Bushite corporate statist wing, not from the populist or libertarian wing. And that's just shown up in decisions that had particular negative consequences for Trump himself. So I'm sure that, it's one of the things he's learned as to who he can trust and who he can't, is that he tried to work with that group while he was in the White House, and it has not worked out to his benefit then or now.
And we're going to get to this one in a bit. There's one other question we're going to get to tonight, which I had to add to the list. Did you happen to watch the new Laura Logan exposure of Ray Epps' new footage and audio saying, "I'm here for the insurrection"? Well, we're going to get there. Robert, what's on the menu for the evening?
Yeah, so topics 1, 2, and 3 are Trump, the New York trial, the Florida classified documents case, the gag orders in D.C. and New York, and then the Colorado ballot access case that might be a preview of things to come. And then topics 4 through 8 are all about the Second Amendment. In one case, Second Amendment and the First Amendment, which involves the NRA and the First Amendment in New York. The Supreme Court's taken that case, and it might have ramifications for the current Trump New York case, amongst others. The protective orders, these orders of protection that get issued, that's going to be up before the Supreme Court as well, about how Second Amendment rights have been stripped from people. Can Congress just unilaterally rule you out of the people that have Second Amendment rights? That's the issue. It's massive. Bump stock case is going to go before the U.S. Supreme Court. Open carry is pending before the California courts. Public nuisance laws, attacks on gun manufacturers is up before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Then we have a verdict in the SBF case, and who's really responsible for exposing SBF. What limits are there on workers' comp? When are you stuck with workers' comp for an injury? Does it include things like assaults and batteries? We have a particular case, which is a very unique case, a 6-year-old
getting involved. Yes. Does workman's comp involve a teacher getting shot by a 6-year-old kid?
Another example could be, does it cover assault and battery cases related to vaccine injuries? That case may have some ramification for that. The sports rights monopoly, the National Communist Against Athletes, has been sued again for its attempts to monopolize amateur athletics. A big realty fraud case that hasn't really got as much media attention as it could, because it could potentially reshape the entire real estate market. It's about the commissions that buyers or sellers have to pay for the buyer's agent. A verdict that may get up to $5 billion just came out of Kansas City, and that just covers a small portion of the potential damages in those cases and the potential ramifications for the entire economy. Berkshire Hathaway was one of the defendants in that case. A couple of bonus cases. The Connecticut caught with election fraud. A rather unique defamation case involving some competing funeral home morgue operators about whether an ex-employee really did something improper with a sex doll or not, and some other things. That's a little fun case. And the Connecticut election case gets into all the issues and all the same legal principles that were 2020. It just involves a recent application of it in the Bridgeport mayor's context.
All right, let's start on YouTube before we end on YouTube with just at least one of the Trump cases. Hold on, which one do we want to start with? We'll start with Let's start with New York, Robert. All right, so first of all, this is a civil suit for alleged fraud, defrauding the citizens of New York. They've compelled, I don't know what lengths they went to try to quash the subpoenas, but last week you had Eric, Don Jr., Ivanka is going to testify on Wednesday. Compulsion of the kids to testify. First of all, I don't understand how they can compel them and not quash the subpoenas at least for Ivanka, who was dropped as a defendant. Is it a perjury trap? They've compelled Donald Trump to testify today, and he did. And he says, "Yeah, my stuff was great. I had cash. But I think the properties were worth a lot more than they were, than you do." The restrictive covenant on Mar-a-Lago says intend to. I could have used it for something else, so it's obviously worth more than the $18 to $27 million valuation. The judge gag order, one fine, $5,000, another one, $10,000. Gagging the lawyers. I mean, make sense of it. How can the judge get away with doing what he's doing?
It's because the higher courts and federal courts didn't intervene when they should have. I mean, this has been a politically motivated, frivolous, baseless case from the day one. There are no victims. I mean, it's what stands out about all the Trump cases. Name the victim. There isn't one. There isn't one in Georgia. There isn't one in Florida. There isn't one in D.C. There isn't one in New York in the criminal case or the civil case. I mean, who's the victims? There are none. So it's preposterous on its face. And so that's, and it's with a court that's not, it should have been signed to the commercial division in New York. This judge refused to do so, and the higher courts didn't force him to do so. And the federal courts, who had multiple out in New York and in Florida, an opportunity to intervene to stop this insanity, have refused to. They've allowed the judiciary to expose its ugly, partisan, prejudicial side of its persona to the world. And the question is, how long do they let this ludicrous sideshow, this ludicrous show trial, continue to the damage and detriment of the judiciary's integrity and its appearance of integrity to the entire world? Now, I've dealt with judges like this many times, but the difference is my cases are the person that's being targeted doesn't have the support of a majority of the country to be the next president of the United States. That's how they get away with it in those cases. They get away with it in those cases because they target the politically marginal. And historically, we've had lots of corrupt judges from day one. The difference is they usually don't target someone that is the next president of the United States and a past president of the United States. They also don't usually do it on such utterly baseless grounds as this judge. They don't violate all the procedural rules. You have an attorney general who got elected saying, I'm going to harass Trump. That by itself should have thrown out any claim that attorney general brought. Yet it didn't.
Yeah, but Robert, and if I may, the judge already dismissed or ruled that Trump could not invoke the political motivation argument. I mean, I got the tweets, one after the other. How does a judge say that you cannot raise as a defense political motivation of the woman persecuting you?
Well, how do you hold a trial after you've already ruled him guilty? You know, how do you hold a trial when you're presiding and you've denied a jury trial in the case? I mean, when it's clear what he's going to do. So he just exposed more today what fraudulent intent he has with his statement that he didn't care what Trump had to say. He wasn't here to hear what Trump had to say. Well, then why are you compelling his testimony? He's making an utter mockery. So what's going on in particular is this clerk appears to be writing a lot of his rulings or making his decisions for him. And this is the clerk he demanded Trump not talk about. This is the clerk he demanded that the Trump's lawyers not talk about. This is the clerk that he demanded Trump's campaign not talk about. This is the clerk that he has fined people for talking about. This is a public official that's having a very unusual influence on these proceedings. And she appears to be writing rulings and making decisions for him in live time. And the lawyers said, look, we want to make a record about this. And he said, I'm telling you, you can't even file a motion to make a record about it.
Okay, and the rationale here. Trump says New York Attorney General, I think, oh no, that's the political hack one. Nothing abnormal about this. Here, Keis says he wants to make a motion to mention information potentially barred by the gag order on the lawyers in their mistrial motion. There's no way to file that motion without referencing the stuff I said you can't. There's no way to file that motion without referencing the subject matter. Engron says, don't file that motion. Yes, I'm directing you not to make that motion, which I presume would reference the information that the judge said they can't talk about. I'm going to protect my staff. I mean, look, I've been
precisely why I said the gag order was wrong from day one. You are a public official. You have no right to silence anybody in a public about making comments about that public official, least of all within a court proceeding, but definitely outside the court proceeding as well. So, I mean, this is a judge trying to cover up the partisan corruption of his court and how he's handling proceedings by covering up the political prejudice of his clerk, who's having an injudicious influence on the court's own proceedings in this very trial.
Now, apparently last week he said there have been other cases where the clerks have assisted the judge a lot and there's been a lot of communication, so this is not abnormal. Well, I mean,
It's this level of it is absolutely abnormal. I mean, this judge is so incompetent. He needs the clerk to make decisions for him. In essence, I mean, we have judges for a reason. Clerks are there to help. They're not there to be the judge. And it appears the clerk is the judge frequently in this case. And thus, the clerk's prejudice is absolutely relevant. For example, if you can move to disqualify a judge for prejudice, well, if the clerk's the one making the actual decisions, then the clerk's subject to disqualification. For example, in the Brooke Jackson case, I inquired into the judge wasn't happy about this either, but that judge in that case. I think it's important to look at clerks because clerks have a lot of influence on judges. And I wanted to know, here's a problem, for example. What if you have a clerk presiding? If a judge has Pfizer stock, the judge should be disqualified. This has already come up in New York, by the way. Children's Health Defense exposed that a judge presiding over a Pfizer impacted case in the vaccine context had stock in Pfizer. And that was inappropriate. Well, what if the clerk does, right? So what if the clerk has already taken a law job after their clerkship with a law firm that represents Pfizer? Can you imagine if you had a law clerk that's going to be one of your future lawyers already on contract to be your future lawyer, working for the judge in a case that impacted you? I mean, this is a problem. And for a long time, people have been unwilling to expose the problem with clerks, with bailiffs, sometimes with marshals. I've had to bring it up in multiple cases. And bailiffs can have huge influence. They're often the only ones that have access to the jury. They often know things that are going on with the jury that nobody else does. I've experienced it firsthand. Clerks and bailiffs have known about juror misconduct that they've hidden from the litigants in the proceeding inappropriately. So, there are plenty of good bailiffs and clerks out there, but there are also rogue ones. And here you have a clerk that appears to be really making the decisions. Well, her political prejudice should be fully exposed to the world, and that's what he doesn't want anyone to even talk about. So that's why the gag order was patently unconstitutional. This is a judge abusing every aspect of his power, and he's agitated that he doesn't get to manipulate the narrative.
He says, am I making the law? I want to bring up another one here. I just got to bring up a few of them. Are you aware of any valuations of the statements? Yeah, that worth tens of billions. Oh, yeah, here we go. Are you aware of any valuations of the statements of financial condition from 2017 to 2021? Trump, I'm worth billions of dollars more than the financial statements, and anything off would be non-material. The judge rejected materiality arguments before the trial. How very convenient.
Which,
what was
by
the
the
other
way,
one?
is insane.
I
mean,
Robert,
historically, you can't bring a fraud claim unless it's material. So, for example, let's say I'm selling you this book, Strange Laws of Old England, and I tell you the inside book cover is green rather than yellow, and it turns out it's yellow. But that had nothing to do with whether you're going to buy the book. But you can't bring a civil fraud case. You can't bring a criminal fraud case anywhere in America in that instance. Materiality is a required element. And yet he decided materiality didn't matter here. He had to because it was immaterial. The other thing that was fascinating today in Trump's testimony, well, two things were striking. I'm not that surprised, but it was still impressive how knowledgeable Trump is of all the intricate aspects of his assets. There's a lot of, there's other business developers out there that don't often know every little tiny tidbit of their business. Trump does, and Trump understood the valuation from multiple perspectives. But the second aspect, and he revealed his detail, that's what agitated the judge. It was just exposing what a ludicrous case it was. Because Trump, more than anybody, can explain exactly why, he was like, this property is between Tiffany's and IBM. I'm not selling it for less than this. And the reason why is because it's between Tiffany's and IBM, which means they have an interest in understanding that property. That's how he got Mar-a-Lago way back. When he first wanted to buy it, they wouldn't sell it to him. So he bought the beachside that was in front of Mar-a-Lago and said, I'm going to build a high-rise right here so you guys don't have a beach view anymore. Then they sold it to him for half the price he originally offered because he understood all the ways that real estate plays a role. The fascinating thing today was the degree to which their whole theory is that there's somehow an absolute valuation. And that doesn't exist in real estate, to be frank. So particularly there's what's called as is and as developed. So like, for example, the government, when they steal your property, they always try to say you can't bring an as developed claim. So they might steal your property that's worth 10 million, but as is, it's worth $1 million, right? They do this all the time. And it becomes very difficult. I've litigated real estate in a wide range of contexts: legal malpractice, real estate malpractice, valuations, takings cases, zoning cases, you name it. And what you realize is the as developed value is how developers look at the property. So when Trump is assessing it, he's looking at, how can I use this property? Can I use it for this? Like, for example, when he bought that beachfront property next to Mar-a-Lago, his goal was to use it to leverage to buy Mar-a-Lago. That gave it a different valuation than maybe it did by itself, right? He got it, cheaper because he understood its better value than what the seller did. Here, they don't seem to understand that. Like, they're saying, well, they're acting like it can only have X value. It couldn't have, as developed value also widely varies because it depends on the creativity of the developer. Like, they were going on about the golf course in Scotland. And they're like, well, this talked about the possibility of building on it, but you hadn't built on it yet. That's not how you do as developed property. When you're looking, I'll give an example. I was looking at property in Tennessee by a lake. It's for sale for $550,000. It's just land. There's no home on it. If you looked at that, if the government came and took it, they would say it's worth $50,000. Because why? Because right now there's nothing on it. Now you have access to a whole bunch of infrastructure, and you have zoning legal rights to build there, which is what a developer would value the land at, and why it's being sold for more than $500,000. But if you looked at it as say agrarian value, the lowest possible pasturing value, then maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's less than that, maybe it's $10,000. If you put it out randomly someplace, it's probably $10,000. The government's trying to argue that it's locked. The as-is value is the only value it can ever have, not the as-developed value. And that's a ludicrous interpretation of how they do real estate. And that's what the whole case basically is.
We're going to end on YouTube now. Everyone come on over to Rumble. We're going to continue this discussion there. Ending 3, 2, 1. Rumble. The link is in the pinned comment of the chat. Going exclusive to